Hello, hello. I am so excited to welcome Gab, founder and CEO of a sister agency with a team of experts who, help you scale your business with various done for you marketing, project management, and system services. So, hello, Gab. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have you here. I feel like we go way back from
Yeah.
like the early days of in the online space during COVID, like all of that chaos. So, I'm just so happy to have you here and talk about, scaling and expanding your team and all that. I would love for you to kind of share a little bit more about you and, what's happening in your world and your business journey with those who are tuning in.
Yeah, so I'm a little all over the place. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure to be able to just share my story with other creators all over the world. But yeah, so a little bit about me. I have two different sides of me, but I'll focus more on the assistant agency side of me. And so I started as a social media VA back before it was even like a thing. I feel like COVID definitely popped off that whole like area, I guess you could say. So I started like probably when I was like 18. To give you context, I'm 28, so 10 years ago. So I feel
Wow.
like a dinosaur in this world, just
Your
being around
skin is
for
in the game.
yeah,
Yes.
like literally, I feel like I've been around for so long. So, anyways, I was solopreneur for a while. I actually was about to quit being a VA social media manager altogether during COVID because I wanted to go all in on fitness coaching. Because obviously during COVID, it definitely popped off too to do all like the online fitness coaching. So yeah, I was about to get like stop and get rid of it, and then I was like, you know what? I need to give it one more go, but I need to do something different. I obviously can't do this by myself, working 12, 15 hours a day and hitting certain limitations that I had. So December 2020 is when I decided to start an agency, and that is where a sister agency came into play. And that is when I hired my first two team members, and then I started to just grow pretty quickly thereafter. We've only been an agency for about 3.5 years, and we're now a team of 10. And we're all over between Canada and the US. And then we have one in France as well. So I always like to clarify that too, because most people assume agencies are like overseas or anything like that, but we're actually all within, like I said, Canada, US, and one in Europe. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. And, we've definitely scaled a lot quicker than I anticipated, but I will say that going from solopreneur to, really stepping into that CEO, because now you have a team with you, is very, very different than what I expected. So I'm excited to, chat about that today as well, because I think there is not a misconception, but I think there's a lot that people don't consider when they're growing their team, whether you are an agency, whether you are just a company growing a team. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Is I was a solopreneur for all those years, and I am self-taught, and I did all that, and then I did the agency.
I love that so much. Like your skin is in the game, but I love that you saw a gap in the industry and really leaned into that and ran with it. And that being said, scaling to 10 team members in 3 years, like that is such an accomplishment, and you should be so proud of yourself for, all that you've done. That is such a shift, and I'm sure there were so many different things and obstacles that you had to overcome. Like you said, learning how to navigate, leading a team and being the leader and being able to organize and not only that, but, communicate with everyone all together in different time zones and things like that as well. So
Yeah.
I love your story and your journey. I'd love to kind of hear more about, you know, because I see all the time of you sharing in your content how like close knit your team really is. And
Yeah.
I see this and I'm like that is incredible because it is really important to have like, company culture and to really have high vibe and energy and connect well together. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about, because I know that you guys do like team meetings where you play games and things like that. It looks so fun. I'd love to hear
Yeah.
a little bit more about like what that entails and your goal when having those team meetings together.
Yeah. So one of the most important things for me when I decided to start having a team was I did work for a corporation at one point. We were all working virtually, of course, but and even in school when I took like business management, something I learned was that people leave people, not the job. And so that really stuck with me throughout all the jobs that I've had throughout the years, you know, while I was doing social media on the side and doing other things, but something that really stuck with me. And so when I decided to create a team, I said, I want to make sure that I give people a workplace that I didn't get. Even if we are virtual, I want to make sure I do my absolute best to make it feel like we're together. And I truly have always been a very family person. Like, I understand there's boundaries between being at work and like, you know, personal life, but I very much wanted my team to feel like we were in a very safe place to talk about anything and all things. And just to be excited to show up to work, even if we are virtual. And
Mhm.
given just how much collaboration we do have at the agency in regards to our work, it's very important that the girls feel like they are friends as well. I'm not saying everyone needs to be best friends, but I am saying like, you know, we need to be close in a sense and just have that trust in that relationship. And so for me, that was always goal number one from the get-go. And like as we just grew the team, I had to find more ways to kind of keep that going, I guess. And that is something that we consider when we are hiring too, is like, you know, what does this look like team culture wise? Because I also understand that's probably not going to be for everybody. Some people want to be on their own and do their own thing. They don't want to be so invested in, you know, the happy hours that we have and getting to know each other personally and stuff. But that is an important thing when hiring. But you know, my intention in those happy hours that you see on social media is very much a time where we can just like get together, not talk about work, and just like get to know each other in some sort of way. So we do things like Scrabble, we do things like Pictionary, we do things like, you know, this or that. And like we've done like a drawing class, like they're all so random. And so each team member actually takes turns hosting so that they can host what they want to do. So I
Mhm.
think it's a really fun way too to see like their interests, right? Like we have some who are very much into like mystery and stuff like that. So it's been really cool to get to know each other that way. And just naturally in those meetings, we just kind of open up more, we're more relaxed to just like talk about things that are going on. And there's definitely been a lot of fun conversations in there. And you know, there's another layer to that is I work with family. I actually have my mom, my brother, and my cousin on the team out of the 10 team members. So like that's another element to like, you know, separating the work and the personal life. So yeah, I that's always been my number one priority above a lot of things. And that is to make sure that my team feels safe, feels heard, but also feels like they're excited to show up for their team and to show up for our clients. And that will always be the most important thing for me when anyone walks to the agency.
Yes, that is so fun. And I'm so happy to hear that you are, so close knit with everyone on your team. And, even having family with business and having those like set boundaries as well. Because, I personally have worked for my parents who are entrepreneurs as well. And definitely when you are working in business with family, it can be a little bit crazy sometimes,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
So, how do you balance like boundaries and how do you balance like the difference, even with really close friends who are on your team as well, in boundaries and setting the expectations from day one for success and for everything to go well.
Yeah. And I also want to just add one more thing to the last one. And I think this is something that I always like to voice a lot. So I'm like, why did I forget to say this? But I want everyone to remember when they grow a team, whether it's an agency or like contractors, whatever you end up doing, it's very, very important always to remember that you would not be where you are without the help that you have. And so I think it's
Mm,
important to pour into those who are supporting your vision and your dream. And I think that's also why I hold creating a strong team culture very close to me. So I just wanted to add that before I
yep.
move on to this next one. But going into boundaries, this was something that was definitely a learning curve, especially just to add, we all live together. So, like I
Okay.
said, my cousin doesn't live with us, but my mom and my brother and I all live together. So, like, that was another element. And yeah, some of the team members that are on my team, we've become close friends just through working together. And even some have come from my personal brand. So, like, there's a lot of different, like, intertwining relationships. So, boundaries have definitely been something that we've had to figure out. And I think it's something that you have to establish right from the beginning to say, when we're at a sister agency, this is our relationship. When we're outside of office hours, this is our relationship. And just making that very clear right away so that there's no misinterpretation and there's no time to take things personally when it's more like a professional thing. And
Hmm.
I always, as the leader, preface that as well to say, like, okay, I am in this mode or I'm in this mode. And I think also kind of like reading the room has really like kind of set the tone as like, what kind of gabs am I getting today? And it's not that I'm
Yeah.
a different person. It's just that I'm going to address things differently and you are to take things differently as well, depending on what light I'm kind of coming to you at. And again, that's been something that's been very challenging, and something that has to have been worked on over the last little bit of, the team members being on the team. And I think it just comes down to communicating that, and just like giving it time as well, because it's an adjustment for everybody, especially being virtual. It's really tough to do that. But yeah, it really just comes down to communicating like, hey, during these hours I'm this, during these hours I'm this. And that's what it is. And it's something that, like I said, it's not for everybody, but thankfully a lot of the team has like kind of understood that, from the beginning, through just good communication and just like setting those expectations and boundaries from the beginning.
I love that so much. Communication really is everything, and I feel like, as you are navigating being a leader and supporting a team and communication and all that fun stuff, I feel like there's a huge learning curve that comes with it, right? And understanding who you are as a leader and being able to communicate clearly and concisely of what you want
Yeah.
and how to really like best support each other in the roles that they have, right, on the team. And so when it comes to being a leader and being able to communicate, was that something that you ever like struggled with from day one? Because I know for a fact, for me personally, when I was first outsourcing, I'm a people pleaser, right? So I just wanted really like a happy team, and I personally really struggled with like articulating what I really wanted and communication in general, because you want everyone to be happy, right?
Yeah.
And so were there any kind of learning curves or different characteristics that you really had to work on in order to like improve as a leader?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's something that people don't talk about often, is that when you step from being a solopreneur to being more the CEO or the boss because you are growing your team, that is so much to navigate. It's not like a quick flip of the switch. It's like you have to now learn, like you said, communication, leadership, and just like how to articulate what's in your brain. And that is something in itself that you need to work on the side while you're also navigating team members being here and ready to go. Right. So
Yeah.
it was definitely a challenge. It's still a challenge, to be honest with you. I mean, we've only been an agency for a short amount of time, and so it continues to be a challenge. But I have definitely gotten a lot better over the years, and I think for me, something that I've really had to work on is my leadership skills, and that is how to listen better, how to understand different personalities, different love languages, different ways that people like to have feedback delivered to them, work on my communication skills, on being able to communicate how I feel and how I see things, but also listening to how others feel and how others see things, and trying to find some sort of a happy medium there. And there's another layer of like, this isn't just a way to communicate like in a regular relationship, it's also a professional relationship. So there's certain boundaries around that as well, as to how far you can take a conversation or not take a conversation, and how much of your personal opinion will be factored in there. And so I think the biggest thing that people could even start working on right away is understanding the people that you're working with, such as, like I said, their love language, their communication, their personality types. We had everyone take their Enneagram test, their personality test, their love language test, and that helped significantly in being able to communicate when it comes to criticism, when it comes to maybe someone's having a tough day, or maybe you need to give someone feedback, and like those one-on-ones, like all those things have been a huge contributor to being able to communicate a lot more efficiently. But also it has allowed me to process my emotions a lot better, because I'm just like a very emotional person. Like, I don't know if it's a Libra thing or what, but I'm just like so emotional with like anything that kind of comes my way. I will take it personally no matter how many times you tell me not to. And
Mhm.
so I had to learn how to kind of compartmentalize my emotions and like process things accordingly. And so I think by understanding people better and even understanding myself has allowed me to be better in that way as well, because it's not just on the receiving end, who I'm speaking to, but it's also on how I receive things as well. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I didn't anticipate I had to learn per se when I was like, yeah, let me hire like 2 people, 3 people, 5 people. Like I was like, I'm just going to hire them and they're going to help me and, good to go. But I
Yeah.
think the most challenging part about scaling is truly the team aspect and the relationships and the, like you said, the communication, like, things like, now back then, my mom and I used to text all the time about work. And it's like, no, like texting is for personal and
Hmm.
is for work, And so
Yeah.
things like that was very important to kind of put into place as well when it came to communication and boundaries. And like learning that kind of like triggered us sometimes was like, we're supposed to be talking about mom and daughter things. And then here we are talking about work things like that.
Mm.
That was something that we had to recognize together that like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of my long-winded answer of like the lessons I've learned in
Mhm.
regards to that.
I love that so much. And, when you were first outsourcing and adding team members on, like you said, like the first two, three, five, and, during that process, what are you looking for when you are, maybe, of course, like relationships you already had and naturally led to, working with you in the agency? Or, during the hiring process, what are some things that you're looking for as like the leader of the agency, as the CEO, when hiring?
Yeah. I think for me, it's definitely making sure that their goals personally and professionally are factored into just the consideration because I think as people hiring, we become very selfish to say, okay, how do they benefit me? But it's
Hmm.
also, am I going to benefit them in regards to their growth and their journey in life, right? So I think it's very important to also ask that when you're interviewing and kind of considering people to join your team is like, what is their long game as well? And seeing how they can become aligned or somewhat parallel. They're not going to be the exact same because at the end of the day your vision for your company is very much like your vision, your company, but there are a lot of people out there that are going to be aligned with what you want to accomplish, and somehow some way that is going to impact them both personally and professionally. So again, going back to asking like what are their goals and seeing how that aligns with even what you see them doing down the line in your company. And I'm also someone who's like a long game kind of person. Like I'm not here to hire someone for 3 months. I'm here to have someone be here for years.
Yeah.
Long-term relationships are huge for me. Even with our clients, like some of our clients we've been working with since I was a solopreneur. So long relationships have always been a big one for me. So that's one of the first things that I ask too, is just like, are you looking for a short time or a long time kind of thing?
Hmm.
And I think too is just understanding what is important to them in that team environment, in their work life balance, and just seeing if that fits kind of your vision as well. And I think again, people pleaser just like you. I have, because I'm so new to this in regards to like a team and like a culture, I've tried to basically take people's feedback and like make it that.
Hmm.
It's gotten me so far, but like only so far until it's like, okay, but what do you want? What do you envision for your company? If you were CEO and you had 100 employees, like what do you envision? And so
Yeah.
I think an important thing too is like be clear on what you want as well. And like I said, find a way when you're interviewing someone to see how will that fit together in this big puzzle. So those are like kind of the basic things. And I mean, obviously there's skills and like seeing like what they're capable of doing. But I think also something that's been a huge help in the hiring process is giving potential people like a project so that you can see, okay, these are their skills, but how do their skills apply in my work environment? So we'll
Hmm.
give them like a client project, like a test project, and it will test their communication skills, their timely skills, and also their actual skill sets for said role. And that has helped a lot too. And again, just like getting better at reading people and understanding actions has definitely helped. So like even just the way that someone's body language is, the way that they respond to me, the way that they take my feedback in an interview or whatever, has helped a lot too. But yeah, I mean, hiring is honestly probably my least favorite things to do because it's just like you don't know until like you really start to like get into it. But um yeah, I would say those are probably like the best cues to really understand if it's going to align with your company. And you should be able to grasp that fairly quickly, whether that's in the interview or at least the first few weeks of someone being on. And I mean, that's why there's also that probation period, is because you can only ask and test so much before hiring. And then you kind of just have to give it a try and see how it goes. Sometimes it'll work out and sometimes it doesn't. And that's just the
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I love that you broke down between like short-term vision and long-term vision.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of female founders who are wanting to expand to a team or wanting to add team members or even outsource for the first time, invest in their business for the first time, struggling to differentiate between the short-term goals and the long-term goals
Yeah.
within the growth of the company, of the business itself. And so when you are, looking for certain areas that you're needing support on within the agency, within your business in general, how do you know what to invest in, right? How do you know where to outsource first as you are compartmentalizing the different areas of focus for the growth of the company?
Yeah, and I think that comes down to my love of operations and systems, being
Mhm.
able to track that data as to, where's our capacity, where's our workload at, and then further speaking to the people in certain departments of like, okay, how are you feeling as well? It's one thing for me to see and click up what their workload looks like, but it's another thing for me to check in on them and be like, hey, how are you doing mentally and like, emotionally with everything that you've got on your plate? And then also kind of understanding, okay, where what are my targets within the business as well, but then also I think this comes down to also having a system in place of understanding your financials to know where can you invest your money and where is that money going to be best invested in as well. And so I think the biggest thing for me is, yeah, again, going back to protecting my team, like depending on how they're feeling is kind of like how I'll start thinking about certain positions that we'll need. Obviously there's also the demand in certain services are more than others, so that kind of is what's like helps me decide kind of where to focus. But then there's that piece of like, what can I afford? Because yeah, like, but then there's another thing to that where it's like sometimes you're not going to feel like you can afford it right now, but by making that investment, it'll give you that time and energy back that will
Mhm.
then be able to get you to afford it because you'll be able to focus more on sales, focus more on marketing, focus more on like training the team or whatever that might be. And so I think it's a hard black and white answer to give in regards to how do you decide who to hire, when to hire, and how much you can afford. And I
Yeah.
think it will really come down to your time, your energy, but also if you already have a team, their time and their energy, and then kind of understanding your market. I think I used to also get very caught up in like what I saw on social media, like what everyone wanted, but it's like instead you should be analyzing what your people are saying to you and what they want, and then kind of leaning into that. And
Mhm.
I used to also sell things that like I liked and like I enjoyed doing, but it's like that's not how it works. Like you need to kind of again read the room and understand what's in demand. And so that's kind of a few different things that kind of help me decide when it's time to hire, when it's time to lean more into one department or the other. And that goes same thing for like professional development. That's something that we have incorporated in the team as well, is that, we kind of rotate departments to invest in some professional development. So, if there's a new software that we want to learn, so we can add that to our offer suite, we'll invest that time into doing that. And that might mean scaling back on client projects to give that team member time to do that training or whatever that might be. And so yeah, not again,
Mhm.
not a very black and white answer, but some things that I think about when it comes to hiring.
I love that so much. And you are the queen of ClickUp, right? And your systems, your organization, all that fun stuff. When you're a solopreneur, we typically have a little bit more wiggle room, right? In
Yeah.
terms of organization, systems, and all that stuff. And then when you start expanding and adding team members on, we're also needing a lot more systems in place and organization, communication, and things like that. Of course, I'm sure it comes naturally to you, but what are some things that are important to remember in terms of organization systems and communications while you're expanding your team as well?
I think it's actually an important thing, not only just when you're expanding, but even when you are a solopreneur. I always say this every time I talk about systems to people, is that my number one thing that I wish I had done differently when I was by myself was documenting my processes from the beginning. Because when you're a solopreneur, you're like, yeah, I just know how to do it in my head. And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden you're like, oh, shoot, I want to outsource. I want a little bit of assistance on my team. And you don't even know what you do to make something happen. And then that becomes very hard to train someone, and then that becomes frustrating on that person because they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. You can't give me instructions. Right. So I say number one thing that I recommend anyone to do, whether, like I said, whether you're a solopreneur or a team, is to make sure you are documenting your processes, because without that, you really can't help anyone, whether
Mhm.
it's yourself or whoever you hire on board. And so I think that's very important, whether that's literally like a Google Doc or whatever that might be. Just documenting that is very, very important. So that's number one. You don't need a fancy system. You literally just need a Google Doc. And honestly, putting something in a digital planner. I understand everyone's very pen and paper, but again, if you're trying to even get a little bit of assistance on something, anything that's on your pen and paper, people don't have access to.
Mhm.
People can't get that, right? So I
Yeah.
think it's a good thing to kind of instill those habits while you're a solopreneur, so that when it comes to adding people on, that's kind of like what you're teaching them to like get on board with, versus trying to figure it out while you're also trying to figure out what it's like to have a team member on. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that's becomes very complicated, is when you're trying to figure out one thing and then another thing together. So it's like, while you can get ahead and do these simple things, because I promise you, when it's time to create those systems, you're like, I have no idea how I do this. I just know I can do it with my eyes closed, which is
Yeah.
fine, but it's not scalable, I think, is the big thing. So documentation, having some sort of a digital planner. You can also do your pen and paper, but let's also put it digitally. And then I think number three is just like trying something out for like a fair amount of time and seeing if it works for you, rather than just kind of jumping ship to what everyone else is doing. Like I understand ClickUp's a hot commodity, but sometimes it's not for people and how they like to operate. And so I always say, like, do your research in those project management tools and see what works for you. But also give it time. Like don't just give it
Mhm.
a week or two, like give it like a solid trial to make sure that it works for you. And also make it work for you too, in a sense, and set it up in a way that's customized versus someone else's vision. I think that's another thing that people do, is they'll get a template online or whatever, plug and play, and they're like, it doesn't work. But it's like, that's because it wasn't created for how you operate and how you function. So yeah, I think those are some of my like most basic things that you could do right from the beginning, is documentation, have it somewhere that's accessible for everybody, and then really assess, is this like shiny object syndrome, or is this actually something that I want to use because I know it's going to work for me?
I love that so much. Is again like looking at the long-term vision of your business, even if you're a solopreneur right now and you're not at a place where you're wanting to outsource or needing to outsource at this stage, but you know that's something that you want in the near future. Like you said, really documenting all the things like how you do things, but also accepting that other people might do it a little bit differently, but see the end result, like the same end result as
Yeah.
well. But the thing is like when you're hiring team members, not throwing them in the deep end and like figure it out, right? Like
Yeah.
you're specialized in this, figure it out. But it's like
Yeah.
really setting the tone and like supporting them through that process. And I think that is also like a huge learning curve, is like, you know, not throwing them in the deep end and hoping that they know what they're doing, and really communicating all of those things. And so when you are adding someone to your team and during like the onboarding process, per se, really like, so from what I'm hearing, you're sending them a doc of all the things that you specifically do in like a chronological order, for an example, for specific tasks and such.
Yeah.
Um, and are there, would you hop on a call to show them how you do it? Or like, what are some like extraneous things that you do to support those that you're adding to your team?
Yeah, so there's definitely the process of like onboarding them to like just get to understand the business a little bit more, and like our actual company and our values, our mission, all that typical stuff that you learn kind of when you get hired at any sort of company. And kind of do things in bite-sized pieces. So we have like, a 60-day plan of like, here's all the things that you're going to be tackling, every few weeks, so that it's digestible. Because I think that's, to your point, throwing them in the deep end, throwing them into like a million different things at once can get very overwhelming. And I mean, like I said earlier, you want to make sure that you're setting your team up for success by making it very digestible, essentially, because it is such a different culture that someone's like entering, right? Like, especially if they were working on their own or if they were working for someone else, like everyone has a different way of doing things. Although many of us do social media management, or many of us do, business coaching, right? Like we all fall under that umbrella, but we all do things very differently. And so I think it's very important to give people that cushion, to really just like get a grasp on things. So we do have a documentation of that, but we're also big fans of like Loom videos. Loom videos
Mhm.
are absolutely everything in our business. Like without Loom, we are all like freaking out. Just because we're all such visual learners. Again, going back to like understanding how people like to learn, how do people communicate.
Mhm.
So Loom videos have been a huge help for everybody on the team. And then calls are a big component to it, especially in the first 30 days, just because it definitely, while we love Loom, if there's a lot of back and forth in regards to questions, clarification, things like that, it's a lot easier to adjust that in, a solid 30, 60-minute call. So we definitely are hands on there. And so honestly, our onboarding process is very different depending on the person. Like some people will learn faster than others. Some people will be a little bit more, like go getter of being like, okay, I skipped ahead to this step or whatever. And then they kind of come back and they've done more than they were supposed to. So I think it really is a matter of just making sure that you and whoever else is going to help with the training is ready to support in any way that's needed, because everyone's level of support is going to be different.
Mhm.
And I think you just have to basically be ready for those first 30, 60 days of someone just needing a little bit more hand holding than you would like, but it will, work itself out in the end. And it's just going to be something that, again, I always like to put myself in their shoes. Like if I were to start over or like jump into something new, I definitely need more than just 2 weeks sometimes. Like some things I'll get maybe in 2 weeks, but not all things. So that's a little bit of like how our onboarding process is that it's not very cookie cutter, just because everyone's so different.
Yeah, I love that so much. And from our conversation so far today, we really broke a lot of things down in terms of systems and communication and just like, working with people in general. And from what I'm hearing is the main themes are the fact that you're working with people, right? And
Yeah.
it's important to, create a company culture that is important to you and actually articulating that and communicating that and really setting the tone again as well and really understanding that everyone is different but also working closely with them in order to make sure everything goes smoothly and make sure everything is going well and such. So I love that so much. And then there's also like the organizational factor of everything and making sure that the systems are in place, communication is there, and you're consistently working and tweaking things to improve, right? And evolve. So I love that so much. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, other areas that you might feel like we've missed on today when it comes to growing a team, maintaining a team, and all of that fun stuff.
Well, I think everything that I've talked about today not only applies to team, but also to your clients. I think that's a
Mhm.
big conversation to have, maybe another day, about just the relationships that people have with clients and what you do and don't do, in order to nurture those relationships as well, and the impact that it can make on your business. And so, as much as my team is the most important thing, because like I said earlier, they are quite literally the only reason my vision can become what it is. Like I couldn't do this by myself. That's clearly why I didn't get to where I was when I was a solopreneur. But at the same time, we wouldn't have all the clients that we have if I didn't have such an incredible team, and our clients wouldn't be as happy as they are too. So it's very much an ecosystem that's so intertwined with one another. And I think CEOs miss that mark. I think CEOs forget that, yes, this is your business. Yes, you're the CEO. Yes, you're the boss. You're the one who makes the decisions. But at the end of the day, people that are working with you are so, so important to take care of. And same with your clients, because without the clients, without the team, you won't have what you have today. And I think that's something that doesn't get across to a lot of people. So I will say it just kind of very black and white that way, that I think
Yeah.
it's very important to not forget that you would not be here without those two key elements. You are the reason it started. You are the reason that, like, it's able to continue to grow and scale for sure. But there is still that big piece of the other key pieces that contribute to it all. And so I think, like I said earlier, people leave people, whether that's your team or your clients. And that's something to really think about, because how you treat people, how you respond, how you take feedback, how you make decisions, all those things are being observed by both your team and your clients, and it's something to be very mindful of. And not saying that you have to be perfect, but just also be open to feedback and to changing ways too. And I think that's also on the other end for team members who are working for someone or on clients' end, is like as a CEO, like there's no rule book as to how we're supposed to do things. So we might make mistakes. We might not make the best decisions. And as long as we can own that and recognize that, I think that's a good step in the right direction. And I don't think we should get, penalized for that or anything like that, as long as we're being responsible about it. But I think at the end of the day, like I said, the company and client relationship is also important to recognize that, like, we're also trying to navigate certain things. Like, obviously we try to do as much as we can behind the scenes and in our own at our own cost versus at the client's cost, but I think that's another, important factor there. But yeah, I think just be a decent human. I think at the end of the day too, that's
Yeah.
one of our core values, is that, like, we are all human. And I think people forget that being in the virtual world, like, we have all been so heavily invested in being online. And I think people forget, like, we are humans who have emotions. We are humans that have lives. We're humans that, we're looking for those interactions that are going to be healthy interactions. And, like, even little things, like literally in team meetings, sometimes they'll be like, you guys, we're not using enough emojis. We're not using enough
Yeah.
exclamation points. Like, we're being so fucking cold with each other, right? Like,
Mhm.
I very much emphasize on that stuff because it's so easy for tone to get misinterpreted through Slack, through voicemail. Like, voicemail was actually probably the best, and like Loom videos, because you can actually see the person, you can hear the person. Where when it's like Slack, when it's emails, whatever, it's kind of hard to articulate that sometimes. So I do actually make a big emphasis on that. That, like, I know it sounds dumb to put an exclamation point or an emoji, but it can truly totally change how your message gets perceived. And I
Mhm.
think that's it's very important. And then, like I said, like, I think speaking to people through Slack as if they're a human and not just a customer service robot is very important as well. And then my last thing, and then I'll stop talking because I feel like I'm just like on a rant now.
I
But
love it so much.
my last thing is, as clients, like, I mean, I've been a client to another agency, to another whatever. As a client, I think we need to be a little bit more kinder to online service providers. I think maybe not intentionally. Sometimes clients can kind of put them on a pedestal and you down there because you're the service provider, when really, no, like, this is a partnership. This is a collaboration that we're doing right now. Like, no one should be talking less than to anybody or anything like that. Like, everyone's equal. And so I think as clients as well, we need to be careful of that authority that we kind of like to kind of give off sometimes when we're investing in someone's service. It's like, I understand you're giving me money, but at the same time, I'm also helping you, right? So it's just
Yeah.
like, I think that's another thing in this online space that I'm witnessing, is that just like that kind of attitude relationship is starting to get a little bit like, I'm
Mhm.
not taking that. And like I said, not a lot of people like to talk about it because, I don't know, we just don't like to. But I think
Yeah.
it's an important thing to highlight while I can voice that on, any sort of platform, because I've seen it both as the agency and both as the client. And so
Mhm.
again, kind of what I was going to earlier, I'm very much a person of seeing it from different perspectives now. And I think that's just a very important thing to highlight as the online space continues to grow, continues to scale, and more people join us on the online space. It's to think about all the things that I literally just said in the last probably 5 minutes.
I freaking love that mentality so much, and I totally agree with you. It is not talked about enough, and especially when you are outsourcing or you're investing or just being a CEO,
Mhm.
you're going to make business moves, whether it's like you're investing or in your business or like in different areas, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to be making investments and again, like working with people when you are communicating in the DMs or through emails, like you said, like it's so difficult to articulate, um, what you're trying to say, or even feel like it's so common in the DMs is like ghosting and
Yeah.
things like that as well when like inquiring. And so like recognizing that there is a human behind the screen and like that's why like you said, like I love voice messages and being on a one-on-one call like this, you get such a whole different perspective and conversation going on as well. So that is such an incredible, rich mentality, abundant mentality to like lead your business and move within your business as. Yeah. So that being said, with with expanding your team or any kind of growth that you want in your business is like putting your ego aside, right?
Mhm.
And like also not putting yourself on a pedestal, but also not putting other people on a pedestal, but just like leading collaboration and leading
Yeah.
in communication and honestly just vibes, energy, and
Energy is a big one. That is
it's
for sure. And I love that through social media, people know the vibe of a sister agency. Like you might have never worked with us, but because what we show on social media, you guys get like what it would be like if you guys were to join our happy hour. And I love that so much. Like that's
yeah.
probably one of for one, like the biggest compliments we get is like how close of a team we are, how much fun we seem to have. And again, it's just you need to do that in order to like continue to keep your team engaged and happy and stuff. Like you have to remember too, yes, they're at your agency and like you're paying them, but at the same time, they could work anywhere else. So don't think just because they're with you right now, you're the only thing that's out there, right? So it's up to you too to it's a lot of give and take. It's a lot of give and take. And so yeah, it's such an important thing. And even vibes is like even with clients, like when you
Mhm.
get on like I personally don't love selling in the DMs because I'm like, I want to see you face to face. I want to like have a conversation because I know energy is a huge thing too. Like when you feel good and safe to talk to someone about something so random and you literally just met them like 5 minutes in, like that's a good sign that like I can trust you to build my business operations. I can trust you with my social media management. I can trust you to tell me what I should do with my business. Like that is it's all at the end of the day. Business is very much like personal relationships. And I think we like to complicate that sometimes, or sometimes forget that, like, again, we are humans basically just curating a bunch of different relationships and exchanging services in some sort of way. Like, like
Mhm.
yeah, I think there's a lot of fundamentals that people are missing, and they're all just very driven on sales or marketing or whatever, or just like, yeah, just being the title of a CEO. But at the end of the day, yeah, you're the CEO, but there's so many other things that are like so much more important than just that title.
Yeah.
Um, and you can really quickly become like a bad CEO too, and that's not good either. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
anyways, vibes is a really important one for sure.
That's why like we have vibed since day one.
Yeah.
So I just loved our conversation today, and I'd love for you to share with those who are tuning in, what's happening in your world and how they can find you and work with you.
Yeah, so I didn't talk about this very much today, but I do have a personal brand where you definitely get to know my vibe, like my personal vibe, my addiction to active wear and just like all the like girl related things. I like to call myself the relatable bestie over there. So that's my Gabrielle T Tongle handle. And that's again very much personal. We barely talk about business things there. So if you're looking for business things, that's not where I'm talking about it. A sister agency is our handle on everything else. And actually, we have our AHA Academy. I've not said this anywhere else, but our AHA Academy is coming back at the end of this month. So May 22nd, I believe the date is. And that is our basically like our ClickUp school that we've made for ourselves. As you said earlier, we're definitely ClickUp queens, and we saw a big gap in just like tools to like learn more about ClickUp and like how to optimize it for us. That wasn't like your general videos and like things that you see on the internet. So we're basically kind of pulling back the curtains on kind of like a DIY way that you can optimize your ClickUp, whether you're a social media manager, OBM, or an ops person on someone's team. It definitely will be very beneficial for you. And we haven't relaunched that since last year of February. So it's been a whole year since we've kind of been on the hiatus of that. So really excited for that to come back. And it's kind of like the main ways that you guys can be connected with us and what we're doing. But yeah, we're very much an agency that I think is not very clear to everyone what we do. And I guess I should have maybe said that in the beginning, but we are a mixture of all the things on the back end of someone's business. So whether that's systems, whether that's social media, copywriting, graphic design, video editing, we literally do it all. And I think that's what I love so much about the agency is that's what I did as a solopreneur is like I'm such a multifaceted person. And so I wanted to make sure the agency replicated that, but have people who are really good at certain things in
Mhm.
like their own departments, but like together as an agency, we do just about everything. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of about our agency. I always say, tell me your problem and I'll let you know if we have a solution.
I love
Yeah,
that.
that's a
Yeah.
little bit about myself personally and then a sister agency.
Amazing. I will definitely tag everything in the show notes. And if you are tuning in and if you are a female founder or, you have a business, of course, that's probably why you're here because we talk about all things business, marketing, and sales. Um, systems, that is like the backbone. Operations, that's the backbone of every
The
business.
foundation of your house, guys. It's literally so
Exactly.
important.
The infrastructure, it's so important.
Yeah.
So, I think that's going to be such a beneficial like program, or
Yeah.
course to invest in. So I love that so much. Thank you so much for being on here today. I loved our
Ew.
conversation and your insights on everything. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.